All right, so had the intro episode. Now you know the whole plan is to look at international sci-fi. And a while back, actually, the first piece of content I thought of doing around a specific movie was for Vanishing Waves. Vanishing Waves is actually out of, let's see, if I remember right, it's Lithuania, France, and Belgium. And it came out in 2012. I learned about Vanishing Waves kind of early on, actually, as far as looking into sci-fi films around the world. I decided the easiest route to start checking out different films would be to look at what I could access with my local library. I actually got lucky. I'm in a pretty good sized city, good library system, and someone in the library system at some point thought this movie was worth having locally. So whoever that unknown person is, thank you. So, what is Vanishing Waves about? It starts off with a group of researchers that want to find out and learn about generating complex thoughts, sensations. They're discussing how they can create simple data, but lack the knowledge on how to do more complex setup. Their goal is to create a foundation of how they understand systematic language. And the way they're going to do so is by hooking up one of the people on their team to a comatose person. Why comatose? Well, in the movie, at least, the idea is that someone who is comatose can be easier to access because their brain is not active in the same way and producing as many sensations, as much data. So this seems to be the best method to start acquiring this knowledge and building up this foundation. Sidebar, this is actually really interesting to me. Kind of grounded, really, in the way that they're approaching trying to gain this better knowledge as to how to start understanding and even being able to produce complex data. And knowing that the best way to go about that is to gain that basic foundation. Be able to understand the bricks before they start building a house, technologically speaking. I'm not going to pretend to be a scientist and ascertain how viable tech like this is in terms of understanding data output from a human's experiences, thought processes, but on a purely conceptual level, it's super intriguing. It puts me in mind of Paprika, Inception, those sorts of films. Only this is quite a bit more grounded in the initial execution. And I think there's something appealing in that, seeing the formation of a tech and something that you're trying to figure out. Anyway, back to the film. This research group, they're very realistic in their expectations of this project that they're undergoing. They fully expect it's going to take several sessions for whoever it is that's hooked up to the comatose person to even get anything worthwhile out of the connection. They don't even have a really serious thought that there will be any direct contact with said comatose individual. It's posited as a possibility, but their largest idea around it is with this connection to be able to observe sort of from the outside in as opposed to direct contact and interaction. I'm actually going to get back to that previous sidebar, the realism and grounding expectations for a theoretical technology that is never before tested and is literally breaking new ground by simply using it is much more realistic as far as how science advances. So much sci-fi, it feels like if it's around new tech, it's either already developed, maybe it's brand new, maybe it's in practice, but it's already actively in use in some way. Or if it's being developed, then it's usually the final stages and it's just making those final leaps. So having a film that they're working their way into this concept and they're just starting on the road to seeing what's going to come of this and what they can actually get out of these attempts of connecting. It's refreshing. It really is. I appreciated seeing that approach. And everyone in the team knows that this is going to be trial and error. They have every expectation that they're going to have to figure it out as they are doing these sessions. I don't think it's a giant leap to share with you that it doesn't go quite as they expected in the film. The individual on the research team, Lucas, who has been determined as the one who will connect with said comatose person, does end up making contact with them. It's unclear how much that connection influences him or alters his own perceptions. And it's an experience in and of itself. Once he starts connecting with them, the film becomes so sensory rich. It's like diving headlong into these explorations of touch, of taste, of just sensation. And you really feel like you're there with the characters as this is going on. I don't actually want to give away any more of the plot. This film is really quite the experience to have for yourself. If I were to categorize a type of sci-fi, it's certainly more into the drama, perhaps a bit of romance, and yet that's not the focus. And of course, the elements of sci-fi, this new tech that they're exploring, what that ends up being, and what Lucas ends up experiencing as a result of being the direct person involved with how this tech is used, and who is the brunt of the experience that's coming out of it. This is hardly the first film that has dealt with the idea of connecting one or more people to the mind or mental process of at least one other individual. This may be the first and possibly only one I've watched where that's actually the complete goal of it. I feel more of the films that dive into this, it ends up being a means to an end. Whether it's trying to ascertain guilt for crimes, Inception used it to get into the heads of important people to gain access to wealth or other important things that person directly controls. Paprika from Japan, it's a device used to explore dreams. So to have it be the tech itself that's the focus, the actual connection, that's the entire point of the film, and what that ends up meaning, because no one has a basis of understanding for it yet. This is breaking that ground. This is setting that up. It was so fascinating, honestly, to watch unfold and have this story of what that could mean. On top of the film being grounded in what they were expecting to achieve, and the progress that they were even hoping to make. They actually give a decent nod to mental health and factoring that into how that should be something to be considered. Before they even start these sessions during the project, they bring in a cognitive psychologist. And the entire point is to monitor Lucas during each of these sessions, get together with him afterwards, assess him for mental stability, and regularly track his experience, his state of mind. And throughout the film, he's actually taking this very seriously, even when some of the project members want to push back on what he is saying. But there is at least these thoughts in place that that is something that should be considered, that should be factored in, that project funding should even go to as this person is trying out this brand new technology. It was very forward thinking of them. I'm not sure that any other film that I've seen ever explores that that's something to be considered or made space for. So, very refreshing to see, even though simultaneously it's a little bit depressing that I cannot recall another film in a similar vein that even gave a thought to it. But whatever, props to this film for having had that thought and had characters who had that thought. Pragmatically speaking, I think there's an argument to be made, and I would make it, that the best for the project would be to assessing mental stability if you want to properly understand the data that you're collecting and give it the context that is needed, and also understand if there is a decline, if that's impacting what you're getting and the life of this data as you're collecting it. It still doesn't mean that it is considered, and I do appreciate that that actually was a thought. Yeah, worth having that thought, but sort of singular for it. Even while they gave this consideration to mental health for Lucas as the person undergoing this for the project, there's troubling ethics, I think, around the idea of the selection of a comatose person for use in this. Obviously, consent was not even something that you could acquire. No one would consider signing off on something that postulates that, even ahead of a medical need. And being in a coma, there is no way you're getting consent at that point. Still, the fact that it did not occur to them to maybe, I don't know, get consent from significant people that are responsible for medical rights over a comatose person to be making these decisions. The film doesn't explore it, and it's not the focus of the film. So this is me extrapolating, because just because we don't see it doesn't mean that it couldn't possibly have occurred. They certainly ticked boxes in terms of other ethics with the setup of this project. I do find it interesting and some level of concerning that a comatose patient was determined to be the best choice as far as a more limited data stream to better parse out the understandings that they were seeking. However, selecting a comatose person, I'm not sure, and I wonder what thought was given to what led this person to be in a comatose state. Was it something gradual? Was it medically induced? Was it a physical trauma? And how would that impact the person's mental state? What effect would that have on the data stream of their self? It's something that it feels like it could have quite a big impact on the project they're attempting. And they'd have no way of knowing because this is the first time they're doing it. They don't have a number of these connections and a number of different people that they have done it with to be able to notice issues in the data where, oh, as we're looking at it, this data, there is significant declines of something that we would view as significant in getting. I do wonder about picking a specific comatose individual to do this project with without knowing what led them to that state. And also, with this being so groundbreaking, there is no way to compare and to notice if they have their own mental decline or mental degradation. It wouldn't show up as different because they have no other people and connections to compare this to. And on a different level, they are realistic in not expecting to directly connect with a person. The tech is new, they have no clue, so it's all new ground. However, the fact that it did not occur to them that this could be a violation of this person's privacy, autonomy, there's something sad about that. It is troubling to think of a patient's rights being effectively waived because they are not conscious, they're not in a position to voice their own opinion on being part of this, being part of a project that connects on such a deep level to them. In fairness, if I was a fully conscious individual who was being presented paperwork, in the eventuality that I end up comatose, would I opt in to allow certain things to occur, especially if perhaps I wasn't expected to recover? I don't know that I would have the understanding to fully consider what that might mean for me. I'm not sure how I would feel about that. I mean, if I've been stuck in this vegetative state and that's it with the likelihood of death, maybe I'm fine with furthering research and allowing that to happen. We willingly donate our bodies to science, our organs for use for others in need, and that is predicated on very similar thought, where if I'm not using it anymore, could I give a better good somewhere in the world by allowing this to happen? So if I was given the opportunity to consider it, I might sign off on it. It's sort of food for thought. The idea that I could, somewhere in the future, or someone past the time that I'm alive, actually have the opportunity to opt into something like this, to further understanding, to deepen that knowledge and have that be useful down the line. I personally have no issue with organ donation. So why does the idea of access on a mental, emotional level feel different? Vanishing Waves offers a lot for ethical consideration, rabbit holes of thought to go down and explore. And some of the sci-fi that I've enjoyed the most, that is what it gives me. It gives me new areas of thought, or perhaps a new perspective that had never occurred to me prior to a given film. And this is certainly one of those films. I can't emphasize enough, I think, how sensory rich the film is. The connections that Lucas and the comatose person are having, even before they stabilize. The sensations are almost encapsulating. It's incredibly gripping to have that. And then upon stabilizing, the experiences that they're sharing, it's practically reveling in sensory. And those experiences being so sense-rich ended up making the real world come off dull in comparison. The whole point of the project in the film is to better understand thought and sensation, and having these sensors that both people are wearing during the experience, allowing the data to stream through and better parse that out. It's not surprising to me that it can be such a sensation-heavy experience. We're not that far removed from our own bodies. So much of what we experience is heavily impacted by the hormones and the chemicals that we end up producing. And it's not really viable to separate that from how we perceive things, how we understand things. The fact that the project's aim is to collect data about a person's experience and any of the inputs that their brain is getting and also outputting, it's not surprising to me that it would end up being so rich in sensation for the people in the connection. Or the fact that by making a connection, that automatically links in sensations and causes those to awaken and be a part of those connections. Even with the film's outcome resting on how Lucas was affected and shaped by these connections for the project, the film was still primarily about this idea of connecting to others so that we can better understand how we view and think and feel, and using that in an attempt to break it down and better understand it and even come to recreate it in a more intentional fashion. Sort of lofty aims, actually. Vanishing Waves was one of the first more obscure, lesser known sci-fi films that I stumbled across from Europe, and I definitely think it's well worth the watch. As of January 2025, when this is gonna get released, the only place that I know of that it's on is the streaming service Canopy. So for anyone who has a library card and their library system sets up access to Canopy, because it's a streaming service that is heavily involved with public access through libraries. So If you've got a library card, there's a decent chance that you could have that set up. So feel free to go check it out if you have the opportunity. I'm not always going to talk about really cerebral films, but I really liked this film, and I decided quite early on that this was going to be the first one I talked about. I hope this gives one of you the idea to check it out for yourself. And if you do check it out, I would love to know what you think about this film. A piece of the joy I get in watching sci-fi is sharing these films that are so interesting and thought-provoking, and being able to then talk with other people about these films. So let's see what you think, huh? Some of the joy I get in sharing sci-fi that I'm coming across and appreciating for myself is the fact that that means people I share it with will then know about it and can see for themselves, and maybe that sparks the idea of looking at what else is out there, because there's so much that is out there. COL's just starting, so we're going to keep talking about many, many movies. I won't always talk about films I even like. A lot of times when I watch sci-fi films for the first time, I'm going in blind. I don't know anything about these films. I don't want the film ruined for me, especially if there's something of a plot twist, something really unexpected. I want it to be unexpected for me. I don't want to miss out on that option just because I dove too hard into IMDb or something else to get a sense of what I'm in for. It does mean that I have also watched quite a few films that I didn't personally like, but I thought they were worth the attempt. And it doesn't mean somebody else won't like them if it's more their style of film or what's going on, so those will get talked about too. Regardless, more films, more content is definitely going to keep coming, so see you soon.